right. Hello, everybody. How are you guys? It is for me Monday night, trying to get this on so that you have it in the morning. And you are going to have to take a quiz today because, again, we've been like, this is day 5 that we haven't been in class. So we are going to take a quiz today. Please make sure you've watched all of the videos so that you know where we're at. And make sure you go back over these, go back over your notes before you take the quiz that is due today. And I'll tell you the access code at the end of the video. So, all right, I think we were on, and I'm down in my basement. Like, I have a whole bunch of people in my house trying to find a place that's quiet. So I'm down in my basement, trying to find a quiet place, which again is always trouble, I think, for us when we do these things at home, which is why I don't make you get on live, because if your house is like mine, you never know what's happening. And there's a lot of noise going on upstairs in my house at the moment. So hopefully it will be quiet down here. So I think, we're on page, I have to go back up between my glasses. We're on page 13, liberal reform in England. Let me see how much left of these notes that we have. Yeah, we won't get finished with all of these today. Okay, so liberal reform in England. And this will be one of the issues, one of the places where things will be different, right? All these other things are going to happen in other countries. We're going to have riots. We're going to have revolutions. We're going to have nationalism. We're going to have all these things happening, except England. England's going to be a little bit different, and you need to know why it's different. And you need to make sure that you know that liberalism in England is going to take some different positions and look a little bit different. So, liberal reform will be happening in England. There's going to be a lot of change in England. There'll be a lot of uh, acts and laws that'll come in place that will make England even more democratic than it was before. And that is the key as to why these things, revolts, revolutions, nationalism, that doesn't happen in England, because it already was a little bit democratic. So 1820, 1830, we start with reforms within the Tories, who are the conservatives. They are conservative, but they will start to address some of the issues in their country. So, under A12 reforms, Britain abandoned the Congress system. They left the Congress system. Remember that protective collective security. And reform prisons, criminal code, allowed membership in labor unions, establish the metropolitan police. So those are the beginnings of these things that they're going to do to reform things. They're going to, again, at the bottom of page 13, the Religious Reform Act is going to be repealed. Since 1673, everybody who was not an Anglican or a member of the Anglican Church could not hold office. And again, that is something that was detrimental to those people that were not part of that religion. You could never hold office, so you could never change things for yourself. Catholic emancipation, finally in 1829, finally granted full civil rights to Roman Catholics. So those are things that are real reforms and changing England and Great Britain and the United Kingdom in a better way. So at the top of page 14, we have a really important Whig leader named Earl Grey, which tea, but not tea. And we're not spilling tea or any of that other stuff. He's a Whig leader. Whigs are the liberal part of the parliament. He is going to form a new government. Whigs are heavily supported by the middle class. That's really important as well. Where the Whigs get their power from are the middle class, and those are the people that are really wanting change. So the most important part of this is the Reform Bill of 1832. England is really straightforward with their stuff, is they just name it the year that it is. And so there'll be other things. But once you get the idea of what these reform bills are looking at, it should be fairly easy to figure out what's going on. The Reform Bill of 1832 is considered a milestone in British history. It is the most significant step towards democracy and suffrage for people in England that we have. Again, spurred by the fact that people were dying of cholera, that there should be, and remember this is what liberals say. The liberals say government should respond to the needs of the people. And in um, the early 1830s, there was a horrific cholera epidemic, and cholera comes from bad water. So that was one of the issues, and that's one of the things that Prince Albert's going to take up. They increased voters from 6% to 12%. Okay, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's doubled, and it's more than any other place in the world except the United States. Eliminated underpopulated rural electoral districts. Okay, so that's kind of like in our current system, this idea of like gerrymandering, that you draw up these boroughs and districts where you're always going to get elected. It's never a fair election type thing, and there's never going to be enough representation. And so they understood that they need to change the districts, redraw them, and that is again really important. Here's what you need to know about the Reform Bill of 1832, and it's number 2E, and you need to make big arrows pointing at that. Resulted in the supremacy of the House of Commons over the House of Lords. So in 1832, we had a flip flop, and the most important body in Parliament now is the House of Commons. And that says a lot. It says a tremendous amount about what's happening in Great Britain. That now the most important body of Parliament is elected and made up of the representation of the people. That's significant and important, and that is why it's considered one of the milestones. Labor reform also comes. The Factory Act of 1833, no child labor under age 9, which again still sounds horrible, but considering that it was 5, that's much better. Slavery is going to be abolished in the West Indies by the work of William Wilberforce. This would normally be the point where I would say, remember last year in world history where we watched the movie Amazing Grace? We didn't get to watch it, but William Wilberforce worked for decades to get rid of the slave trade in England, and finally does that. Now we got some bad ones coming up. The Poor Law of 1834 required healthy unemployed workers to live in a workhouse. That wasn't good. Workhouses were notoriously difficult places to get out of once you got in. It was difficult, especially for young people, children, and women who were separated. So there were workhouses for men and then workhouses for women and children. The workhouses for women and children were horrific, were filled with child abuse, women put out as prostitutes. They were horrific. You never wanted to go into those workhouses. They were so difficult to get out of. And if you have any older relations, probably great grandparents, that talk about going to the poorhouse, that's what they're talking about, these things. They were horrific. And even though the United States didn't have as many as England, they were awful places to be because you were put to work, but then all your salary went to pay all your stuff, and especially horrible situation for women and children. The Mines Act in 1842 prohibited child labor in mines, and again, that's a good one. 10-Hour Act limited work hours for women and children to 10 hours a day. Now, that's something that sounds good, but it will be used against women for a long time. Like, see, you guys aren't strong enough, wealth or healthy enough, or have enough strength to work more than this. So it's actually, that sounds like a good thing, but it's bad because what it sets up is this um, lesser than uh, situation for dealing with women in the government. And then we've got this big giant box around Charterist. Now, the College Board loves the Charterist. One, because they're really important, and two, because their name says absolutely nothing about what they do. Charterist are people that demand suffrage. And again, suffrage is voting. So what they want is universal suffrage. Now, that does not mean women. That just means all men. We're not yet at women. They also want secret balloting. So voting in this time period was not done secretly. It was done out loud. You had to say it out loud. You could be subjected to intimidation. You could be subjected to retaliation by your vote. So just think about this. Gosh, I can't remember the last time when we voted for homecoming court, but think about it in art class. If you had to say your vote out loud, like in front of everybody and all your classmates, how that might change your vote, right? Which you should always be voting for yourself because all of you are princesses and you should vote for yourself. Just a side note. But not being able to vote in secret really had a huge impact on the few people that could vote. Again, intimidation, retaliation. So, secret balloting is one of the ones they wanted. No property qualifications for members of parliament. So, even if there were a large number of people that could vote, you still could only be in parliament if you own property, which again eliminates a lot of people, especially the middle class. Salaries for member of parliaments and annual elections. The significant, now here's where we always get a kick in the butt in world in history. This is really, really important. But then look, it doesn't work. It fails. So when it starts, it doesn't fail. It takes a long time for it to happen. But these charterists light the fire, the little small smoldering fire that will eventually take place at the turn of the century. College Board loves to ask you about these charterists because their name says nothing about what they are. They also love to ask you about them because nothing happens. They aren't successful. The bottom of the page, Corn Laws in 1846, Anti-Corn Law League, again, arguing for those lower prices. Navigation Acts are repealed in 1849. And at the bottom of page 14, again, I would put a big box around this. Internal unrest in England was relatively small. It's very small because the government is really working on those liberal reforms in baby steps, teeny tiny baby steps, but things are moving forward. And in Great Britain, the government is more successful in enacting those types of liberal reforms. So now we get to the fun part. On page 15, the revolutions of 1848. And again, this is incredibly important. There are always questions about the revolutions of 1848. There's usually always a writing prompt about the revolutions of 1848 for two reasons. One, they're really important. And two, none of them were successful, which again is this awesome moment in history where you got to learn about things that didn't work. And so we're going to go through these and look at what you need to know. And really important is this overview, right? The overview of how long have I been talking? 12 minutes. Okay. Sorry again for the close up. So it is a watershed political event in the 19th century. It happens right in the middle, 1848. And a watershed means things are not going to be the same after. It is a watershed moment. It washes everything out and it makes everything different afterwards. It should not be lost on you that after 1848, even though it's going to take about 20 to 30 more years, will be the unification of Italy and the unification of Germany. It comes directly from these failed revolutions. 1848 revolutions are influenced by, and you need to know these three things: nationalism, liberalism, and romanticism, as well as economic dislocation and instability. Now, we always are looking at history over again. And more so, probably in the last 20 years, there's been a lot more give to economics. That really was a driving force. But we're going to stick with what the College Board wants us to know: nationalism, liberalism, and romanticism. Only two places did not have significant upheaval. Britain, we just talked about, and we know why, because they were doing all these liberal things. And Russia, why? Because they would kill you. There's no chance, right? There's no chance of you ever having any kind of overthrow in Russia because they're just going to kill you. So, liberal reforms in Great Britain, that's why, and conservative oppression in Russia prevented anything from happening because they would kill you. Neither liberals nor conservatives could gain an upper hand. What's going to happen? And this again is number 5, this watershed moment. Even though they don't succeed, no revolution is going to succeed. But here's what happens: they end serfdom finally in Austria and Germany. And when that serfdom ends in Germany, that is when we begin the movement toward German unification. establish universal male suffrage in France. So France is going to be the first place universal male suffrage. If you're a man in France, you can vote. I think the age is 24. Don't think 18 because it's not that young, but that is significant. Um, Stimulated unification impulses in Prussia and Sardinia and the Piedmont. In other words, it is stimulating unification in the Germanic states and then the Italian city states. This is going to be the big push towards the unification of those two countries. Last of the liberal revolutions dating back to the French Revolution. So this will be it for the French Revolution. Its lasting legacy, which is a long time, over 50 years, is going to end in 1848. Okay, so France has theirs, and again, you can read through all of this, but it is crazy. And the College Board, thankfully, does not have you know any of this stuff because it's crazy. It just goes back and forth, back and forth. So we've got a February Revolution, the working class. We've got all this stuff: abolish slavery, 10-hour workday, abolish the death penalty. Then we have June days, cause the government close national workshops. Again, thankfully, you don't need to know any of that. But what we do need to know is on page 16. On page 16 is our first look at Italy. So these Italian city-states will slowly start to think and begin the process of unification. It's not going to happen until the 1870s, so we're 30 years out, but we have some names that we need to start thinking about. Italian nationalists and liberalists sought to end foreign domination of Italy. Again, we haven't talked about Italy since the Renaissance. And if you remember in the Renaissance, those Italian city-states called in France, they called in Spain, and then they just kind of took over. Austria is in Italy. There's not really any part, France is there. There's not really any part of Italy that's just Italian. And so that's the first thing they want to do. We want to get rid of everybody who's not Italian. That's a nationalistic viewpoint. So that's the first thing. In 1848, Milan, Lombardy, and Vienna, Venetia, expelled Austrian rulers. So they were successful in that. The Bourbon rulers, which is France, in Sicily and Naples are defeated. And Sardinia declared war on Austria. Giuseppe Mazzini, and we're going to see his name a lot in the next coming chapters, as well as Giuseppe Garibaldi, will be two of these forces that will be working towards Italian unification. They will be the two most important ones. Those of you that really look up at my tchotchkes in my classroom, up by my bobbleheads, there's that big, tall statue. That's Mr. Garibaldi. And two students got him for me. I don't know where they got him. I don't know where you find a statue of Giuseppe Garibaldi, but they found a statue and brought him for me, and it was awesome. Failure of the revolutions in Italy resulted in conservative victory, and the causes for the failure. Even though all of this happens, Austrian crushed Sardinia, regained Lombardy, French troops take back the Papal States. So they were successful in some, but not in others. And this is the causes for their failure. And please put a box around this because this is the important part. Rural people didn't support the revolution. They have no support from the rural people, which makes up the vast population of Italy. Revolutionaries were not united. So they are still not united in a sense of thinking about one Italy. They are still Vienna, they are still Naples, they're still Florentine. Fear of radicals among the moderates and lack of leadership. And that's going to be a big thing. That's going to be the huge difference between Italy and Germany as leadership. And that will be some of the things that we'll be looking at when we get into the unification of those two countries, the compare and contrast. That's all over the place on the College Board. Austria, again, the place that feared nationalism more than any place was the Austrian Habsburg Empire. You have to know that. And the reason being is they are made up of a lot of different groups of people. So the Habsburg Empire was vulnerable to the revolutionary challenge of nationalism, very vulnerable. And again, when we start World War I in our next 3 chapters over, it's going to start here. So it is important to understand that. Ethnic minorities sought nationalistic goals. And look at all of these minorities that are in there. Hungarians, Slavs, Czechs, Italians, Serbs, Croats, and a whole bunch more. and a little bit of the non-Germans as well. Austrian government was reactionary, liberal institutions non-existent. They did not allow any liberal institutions whatsoever. Social reliance on serfdom. And at the top of page 17, the only real place that was somewhat successful was Hungary. So we have a Hungarian leader or a Magyar, that's what they called themselves. The Czechs and Bohemia, as well as 3 northern Italian provinces, declared autonomy. And autonomy means I'm going to rule myself, which it's okay to say that, but you kind of sort of have to do it. It's like Michael Scott, my office friends, when he said, I declare bankruptcy. Well, that's kind of what these people said. We declare that we're going to rule ourselves. And in that aspect, the Austrian Empire is going to collapse. Student workers stage mass demonstrations. Please look at 2C, that second dot. Metternich is forced to flee. This is, again, Metternich's fear that has come through. All of this stuff is going to happen at the same time. Hungarian armies drove within sight of Vienna. However, as I said, the Hungarians are ultimately defeated. The Austrian army regrouped, gained the aid of Slavic minorities who hate the Hungarians, which is always nice in an empire to have groups that hate each other. And the Austrian and the Russian armies defeat the Hungarian army, and the Hungarians would have to wait until 1866 for autonomy. So they declare it, but they don't get it. The revolution failed. Bohemia, same thing. It's going to be crushed as well. The Germanic states, let me see. Yeah, we're going to finish this. We'll get to Romanticism tomorrow. The Germanic states, revolutions inspired by the 1848 revolutions in France. The liberals in this case, now this is the beginning of the Germanic revolutions, is with liberals. They start with, let's write stuff down. Let's make a constitution. Liberals demanded constitutional government and a union or a federation of Germanic states, and they try it. They get the Frankfurt Parliament. Liberals, nationalistic, called for elections. They're going to elect from all of the different states in the German Bund for the purpose of unifying the German states. Now, they also are going to start wars as well. They start a little war with Denmark to get Schleswig and Holstein. Prussia is going to declare war on Denmark. The Frankfurt then presented a constitution for a united German federation in 1848, selected King Frederick as their emperor. And on page 18, the Prussian king rejects the liberal constitution, says, nope, this is conservatism. Conservatism. The king says, no, I'm not taking a constitution. I'm not going to rule with the constitution, because he says, I have the divine right of kings. He would not accept the crown from the gutter, from the people. Nope, my crown doesn't come from the people. It comes from God. And so he imposed a conservative government that guaranteed royal control of the government. That's going to last until 1918. And this failure of Prussia and Austria to support unification collapses that revolution. And Frederick Wilhelm's attempt to subsequently unify Germany fails. So again, failure. And it is called the humiliation of the Ulst. Prussia dropped the plan to unify Germany, leaving Austria out. And that will be, my friends, why Austria is not part of Germany to this day, because of this. So our last book on page 18 and 19 is the evaluation of the revolutions of 1814. And again, look how big that is. And it is really important. You need to know these things, okay? So neither liberal nor nationalistic revolutionaries nor their conservatism were able to maintain a dominance between 1789, the end of the French Revolution, and 1848. Liberalism, nationalism, socialism, and democracy made some gains, but they were kept in check by the conservatives. Many of the revolutions were spontaneous. They couldn't effectively gain popular support. And this is important. Why couldn't they gain popular support? Why? Because everyone's still afraid of the French Revolution. Everyone's still afraid of the French Revolution. Okay? Revolutions were largely urban. Middle class who led the revolutions came to fear the radicalism of the working class. Division among nationalistic ethnic groups, again, like in the Austrian Habsburg Empire, worked against each other. So there was all that stuff that happened. Positive aspects. What were the positive results? Universal male suffrage in France. That is a big one. That's huge. It's what the French Revolution was all about. They eventually get it in 1848. 2B is really important. Serfdom abolished in Austria and the Germanic states. Parliaments established in Prussia and other Germanic states, even though they're still dominated by conservatives, at least they're there. The top of page 19, Prussia and Sardinia Piedmont emerged with new energy to achieve unification. So Prussia in the Germanic states, Sardinia Piedmont is an Italian city state. Those are going to be the two places that are going to work towards unification. So, the other really important part, the revolutions of 1848 brought to a close the era of liberal revolutions that had begun in France. And this is what's going to happen. Now everyone says liberalism didn't work. It's not working. We tried with the paper pencil constitutions and it didn't work. So now we got to try something else. And that something else is going to be nationalistic war. So that's where we're going to end. And we'll do romanticism on Wednesday. Hopefully, maybe we'll be in class. I don't know. So you now have a quiz to take. The secret access code for the quiz will be snow, lowercase n SNOW, because it is still snowing, I think. Also, if you look, there's an exit ticket that you need to fill out. We haven't really done those yet, but I feel like I need to check and make sure you're watching these and doing them. So, quiz, exit ticket, access code, snow for the quiz, exit ticket. Excuse me. Um, it'll be some questions. I don't know what that is yet, but anyway, have a great Tuesday. Email me if you have any questions. And gosh, I hope I see you guys on Wednesday. Really miss you a lot. All right. And then you can take a look and see if you know any of my book titles. That's just my fiction books. And if you really want to check, they're in alphabetical order. All right. Bye.